episode 169. When there is no panic, solutions will show.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
And we are closing in on episode 200 of the very best podcast in the world, your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. Now, I had to chuckle because I heard my nicotine lung whistling. Since we're talking about health and all, it's kind of a bit ironic. But that's, after all, how this podcast really started out, as a persiflage and a big middle finger to all of those cohorts out there trying to loot your pockets, promising you a better and improved life and better sales skills and high closing deals and, that kind of shit. You get a similar perspective here, but I'm not going to rape your wallet. If you feel like donating, reach out to me. I'll probably tell you to donate it to somebody else and just make somebody else better, because I'm pretty good and have been for all the weekend because we had one of the most insane groups in our Airbnb. Was this wild collage of musicians who played, together in several bands, and one with the other two and the other with the other two. And it was just this fucking insane, great weekend with great guests. And we had tons of fun. So thanks a bunch to Max and Janosch and Simon and Martin for making this weekend probably one of the greatest in a very long time, and we're really looking forward to seeing you guys again. That being said, what's next on the agenda? Well, housekeeping. How about we do housekeeping? So number one, views my own, blah blah blah. If you don't like them, stay subscribed anyhow. You're going to run across an interesting episode for you, or, somebody, or, it can help somebody else perhaps. Might as well stick to the subscription because, it's free. And the advice seems to be valuable because, I'm getting remarks and feedback. And so in that sense, let's jump right over to sharing is caring. I just, kind of introduced the thought that, there will be episodes which, may not necessarily reflect 100% with your current life situation, but maybe they will, down the line. And perhaps there are people in your sphere of influence who, could take advantage of the information in that episode. So, don't think egoistically. Sharing is caring. So, share this stuff with other people. You also might have noticed that I have removed the explicit thing from the podcast. And the reason for that is that the reach is supposed to increase, because that's what this podcast lives off of. It's not off money. It's purely altruistic. And the further the reach, the more people can actually benefit from the information herein. And I recently figured out in an interesting, I don't know whether it was a subreddit or whatever, that, a name, unless your name starts with Joe and ends with Rogan, you're not going to be featured anywhere, if you mark your content as explicit. So you will hear me restrain myself viciously from dropping quote unquote F-bombs and, that kind of ordeal. I'm trying hard, but I will slip. I'm quite certain of that. And so in that sense, let's get started with today's episode, which is about not panicking and being rewarded with solution to interesting situations. Damn it, I was so close from dropping the F-bomb there. And what I noticed really in my 20 plus years of fire department work was that when I started out, and the alarm went off, I would just, I would hammer it, and just run to my gear, get in the car, screeching tires, get there, because every second counts. Well, thing is, you're not going to help anyone, much less yourself, if you wrap yourself around a tree on your way to the fire station. And it took me quite a few years to realize that. And with increasing responsibility, not only in that voluntary work where I made battalion chief very early in my life, I had tons of other responsibilities that at a young age, which didn't amount to chores. It's like your parents tell you, well, you get the responsibility to take out the trash. And you're like, whoa, that's a really important responsibility. While, in fact, it's just things that you should have on your platter, at a certain age, because, trash starts to stink and all. I know you can't be bothered because there's, tons of other stuff that is way more important, like, drugs and alcohol and girls and, that kind of ordeal. But, the responsibility is, can start there. Yeah, it is. There's no debate about it. But when you get introduced, or when, the responsibility gets put upon you, in millions of euros, which you manage for other people, and, essentially being in charge and watching out for the souls of your, fellow firefighters, or whatever you do, responsibility kind of calms you down, because, and makes you think, right? It makes you contemplate about whether the screeching tires are actually going to get there faster to a degree where you're actually going to make a difference, or, would it have the same effect at the end of the day, driving slower, driving more conscientious, whatever, and getting there safely by not entirely eliminating, but reducing the risk of having an accident, maybe involving even other people, to make things worse. So that's what I said, about responsibility. And that's where my first thoughts about, or where I first cleared panic out of situations like that. Now, I was a rather calm, cool customer pretty much throughout my life, but this really toned me down, because I realized that panic doesn't solve anything. Now, essentially, this wasn't really a panic situation, but let me give you a different example where where taking out panic of the equation solved the problem rather quickly. Because, what happens when you panic? You freeze up, you make stupid decisions, because, not necessarily on an emotional level, right? But what you do when you panic is, you kind of boil down to your basic senses. This kind of ordeal of fight, flight, and, fright, or whatever it is at the end of the day. Your instincts are basically boiled down to their bare minimum survival kind of function. So anywho, we were coming, a friend of mine and I, we were coming up to an accident, to a motor vehicle accident, I guess would be the technical term, car crash, for all of us here in our little intimate show. And what happened was, a friend of mine who was also a firefighter resorted not to his training, but he went apeshit because, he had never seen a really damaged person before, damaged by a car accident. And the look isn't pretty, and you have to get used to it. But this dude was, rather young, and he froze up, and he wanted to do 100,000 things at the same time. And the most stupid thing he wanted to do was he wanted to get in the car to the person who was, not in a very good mood. Let's put it that way. Understandably, they were bleeding and they were in pain and they were in a pretty miserable fucking situation. So, slipped. So, anywho, he stuck his head into the driver's window, which was, burst out, to try and unbuckle the person. Now, here's the thing. The airbags hadn't released yet. And sometimes they do much later. And that's a pretty stupid situation if you have your head sticking in there, because that thing's going to break your neck. It's going to snap it right in two. And you're not going to be stuck with, one seriously injured person. There we go. But you're going to be stuck with two at best, and at worst, the person helping the person in need is going to be dead. And that's pretty much a catch-23 because that's obviously the worst situation that you can get into. Now, I had trained these guys, right? And they should have known better, but they fell into panic, resorted to their instincts. The instinct was to help that person without thinking of their own safety first, right? And that's where the point kind of becomes screwed up. In another very interesting thing, the guy wanted to, after I tore him out of the car and really, really, really washed his head about the stupid thing that he had just done, he wanted to, or he called the emergency services, because we were, there on with our private stuff, didn't have the gear to help. And anyhow, the person in the car was still, moaning and screaming and, asking for help. And, I told him to call emergency services because obviously we needed backup. We didn't have the gear. So he did. And the dispatcher asked him, "Hey, where are you?" And I was like, and I was looking at him because he had the speakerphone on. And I was like, looking at him, I was like, send him the coordinates. And I was like, how? Because it was a motorway. So, I didn't really know where we were. And it was like, how am I going to do that? It's like, well, do you not know your, $1,000 phone? There's a function in there where you can just look up your coordinates where you currently are with the GPS, and then tell them the coordinates. And so anyhow, long story short, went to that, but it was this panic that made working with that person insanely difficult, right? And the solution was essentially very easy. We went to the passenger side, right? Because you have more room to operate. Even if the airbag deploys, then, you're going to be in pain. It's going to be loud and it's going to be, pretty frightening. But it's not going to snap your neck. So we went to to release the seatbelt that was keeping the person in. We then, with brute force opened the driver's door and got the person out through the driver's door without putting ourselves in harm's way. And he did then find out, because it shown all of my guys that, how to do that, how to look up the coordinates of where you currently are on your smartphone. And everything worked out fine. And the solution presented itself because I kept my cool and was able not only to show him the importance of what had just happened, but, to also solve the situation and bring everything to a happy and good solution. Now, panic results in a lot of stupid situations that could be avoided if you kept your cool. And I know that for a lot of people, it's insanely difficult to remain cool in a situation like that because they cannot fathom or they basically are untrained in reducing or, not reducing, but protecting themselves from falling into this basic state. And it's a very difficult training to go through. And it's mainly about self-realization and awareness, being aware of the situation that you're going into panic, right? And I don't mean very difficult situation like I just mentioned. I mean like, very simple situations where you are afraid for whatever reason, and then you notice that you start to slip, that your muscles tensen up. Your muscle tension increases. I think that would be the proper English term. You start sweating. You immediately start to notice that something is happening in your metabolism, and then that's the time. That's almost already too late. But that's the time where you have to be aware and say, I'm going into panic, and I need to stop myself from doing that. And it's easier said than done. I've been there. It's like I said, I used to run to my gear, put it on, screeching tires, that ordeal. And it took me quite a while to become aware of the situation, and from external sources to learn that, these 2 seconds you may save on a 500-meter drive are not going to make the difference, but the risk of getting into an accident is much higher, right? And so therefore, it's kind of like this, the solution presents itself when you don't panic. You get to the fire station safe. In another situation, you don't panic sell your shares or stock or whatever, because you keep cool and you have realized and trained yourself to understand that, everything goes up over long term, right? So you're talking about investing and not trading. We went through that in another episode. And this applies for pretty much every life situation where you are prone to panic. You're prone to freeze up because the situation is threatening. But then, if you look at that in a situation, I don't know, you're riding in a subway car, whatever, somewhere, and this dodgy person comes in and you fall into panic, and they are actually a predator, looking for trouble. They're going to notice for some unknown reason. I don't know how it works. I'm, not really into the chemicals, but they are going to notice that, from your posture and gestures and whatever, that you are kind of like in a victim state. You're looking to flee the situation, right? You're ready to run, but you can't go anywhere because the subway is moving. And I've seen that, quite a couple of times. And interesting things start to happen in, kind of like the very, very, very monkey genes that we have left in ourselves, both from a predator and a prey perspective, right? And anyhow, I'm getting carried away. Sorry. So what's the point? The point is that you can only notice yourself panicking if you are aware of the present moment. And only then can you change your attitude towards the situation. Let's get back to the subway card, even though I didn't want to. If you don't freeze up, if your muscle tension doesn't increase, if you don't start sweating, you are essentially in control of your body. If these very basic instincts, if you can keep them from, taking control over your metabolism, over your muscles, over your body, over your face, over your, whatever, then you're going to be in a better fix because you are back in control of your body. And as soon as you start to signal that to the predator, they're going to be like, okay, that person is, healthy. That person has a good, has a good posture, very, not very dominant, but, not too submissive or scared or whatever. And they're immediately going to focus their attention on somebody else. And that's where I think I was going with this. Anyhow, there's many situations that tend to put us into panic mode. And it's not about avoiding them. It's about how you deal with them. And that's where we get back to, again, the awareness of the present moment, if you notice that you start to freeze up, if you notice that you start to go into a panic, that's the time when you have to be aware that you are, and to take the control from your instincts over your body back to your rational mind. And then you can train yourself to actually stay away from panic attacks kicking in, or from panic as a result of a situation. There we go. So in that sense, I think it's time to wrap up. We've already overdone it again. But I hope I was able to get the point across that, panic doesn't lead to any type of solutions. And in that sense, let's close this down for today, and we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about blind people proofreading your vision. Take care. Peace out. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow, folks.